President Obama has embarked on a clear, unambiguous attempt to make us think about our country through the lens of Lincoln's life. It's kind of a Lincoln legacy project. But unlike the very real Ronald Reagan legacy project or the very funny Bush-Cheney legacy project of late, Lincoln himself doesn't really need a legacy project in the sense that nobody really objects to the idea that Lincoln was a great president, a great American, a great man. He does not need his image polished. This legacy project, however, is not to make us feel differently about the man in history. It is to make us feel differently about ourselves. It is to make us feel differently about our country, about our politics today. It's to make us see some types of problems as quintessentially American challenges, to see some solutions and approaches to problem solving as quintessentially American, and specifically as the heritage of our American history. Do we agonize about whether we've got the resources to be who we think we are as a country in the face of financial crisis and scarcity? Yes, we do worry about that. And we know from Lincoln's life that we as a country have faced down much worse challenges of this kind before. Financial crisis of the 2000s, meet the unfinished Capitol dome. The metal for that dome needed elsewhere for bullets during Lincoln's time in office. Are we now divided against one another politically and ideologically? Yes, we are. And we know from Lincoln's life that we have faced down much worse challenges of this kind before. Partisan warfare in Washington, meet actual American Civil War. Are we capable of reconciliation? Are we capable of bridging the divides between ourselves as Americans? Of course we are. And we know from Lincoln's life that we have faced down much worse challenges of this kind before. Republican Judd Gregg backing out of Obama's cabinet. Meet Confederate soldiers walking home free and unpunished in 1865. The Abraham Lincoln Legacy Project is kind of the king of put this all in perspective, right? And the small ball political risk of there being so much Lincoln in the Obama presidency is that, sure, the new president is inviting comparison of himself to Lincoln. And when you compare yourself to a giant of American history, it's hard to avoid looking small yourself. That's the risk. But the big picture, political reason to keep Lincoln in the forefront right now is to ask everyone else, to ask the whole country, to ask all of us to keep Lincoln in mind as our own American inspiration. It's essentially a value judgment. This president is making a value judgment about American history, choosing Lincoln rather than lots of other worthies, Jefferson or Washington or FDR or Truman or Benjamin Franklin. He's made a value judgment to use Lincoln to tell stories about Lincoln's life, to tell us about our own history, to try to inspire us, try to inspire the country about our own history.
In the war's final weeks, aboard Grant's flagship, the River Queen, President Lincoln was asked what was to be done with the rebel armies once General Lee surrendered. With victory at hand, Lincoln could have sought revenge. He could have forced the South to pay a steep price for the rebellion. But despite all the bloodshed and all the misery that each side had exacted upon the other, and despite his absolute certainty in the rightness of the cause of ending slavery, no Confederate soldier was to be punished, Lincoln ordered. That was the only way Lincoln knew to repair the rifts that had torn this country apart. It was the only way to begin the healing that our nation so desperately needed.
Do you hear the allegory there to today's politics? Wonder who Americans are now feeling some degree of malice towards? Well, 2/3 of Americans say they now see it as necessary to investigate the previous administration. And you know, malice towards some does not seem to be President Obama's interpretation of Abraham Lincoln's message about reconciliation, much to the chagrin of many of us operating in a current contemporaneous political context. You know, already in a presidency that is less than 4 weeks old, we are seeing this president's commitment to Lincoln's values being strained, maybe to the breaking point, maybe not, we don't know. Just yesterday, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer labeled bipartisanship as so damaged right now that it's, quote, on life support. Obama's commitment to assembling a team of rivals bipartisan cabinet was dealt another blow today with the sudden withdrawal of Republican Senator and would-be Commerce Secretary Judd Gregg. The president, of course, has jerks like me telling him he ought to ignore those on the other side of the aisle who are still peddling bad ideas. when it comes to things like fixing the economy. That bipartisanship is a waste of time, right? So what's the lesson here? The lessons to be learned from Lincoln? We've done this before as a country, and it was way harder back then. That is always the lesson when it comes to comparing today's current politics to Lincoln. We have tons of news to get to in tonight's show. We have lots to report, for example, about that Judd Gregg business. Please stay with us.